I'm the Director of Customer Enablement here at Media Valley, and today I am thrilled to be joined by Mr. Matthew Lawson, Global Marketing Operations Specialist at Sonos. Welcome, Matthew.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. I know you're a busy guy, so appreciate you taking some time out of your day just to jump on. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping just to jump into. We are going to be doing a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have any questions, just drop them into the little Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen there, and we will do our best to answer them at the end of the session. We're also going to be recording this session. So if there's anything that you miss, or if you want to share this session with any other folks after today, you'll be receiving a link in your inbox a little later this afternoon with our daily roundup. We will also be putting out a quick poll towards the end of the session. So I would really appreciate it if everyone could just take a couple of seconds to answer the poll. That would be awesome and give us some really useful feedback. Cool. So that's all the boring housekeeping stuff out of the way. Let's get into some of our more interesting Q&A questions. Maybe just to get things started off, I know, Matt, we've been working together now for a few years, I think 3 years.
Yeah.
But perhaps you could just do a quick intro for everyone here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit about Sonos as well.
Yeah, so I'm Matthew Lawson. I'm the Global Marketing Operations Specialist at Sonos. I'm based in Oakland, California. My history has been in data asset management and multimedia production for various e-commerce platforms like The Real Real, Compass Real Estate. I've also done some commercial photography work. So I've been living in this kind of ecosystem of data asset management for a while now. And yeah, now that I'm at Sonos, Sonos is a wireless home audio speaker company, home theater, portables. They are kind of the world class when it comes to that kind of sound design, as well as the kind of home wireless audio technology. So I was really excited when I got to join Sonos. They brought me on to help them transition from one very different platform to specifically Media Valley. And yeah, Rob has been very essential in that process kind of since day one of when I started there to now. So yeah, really excited to speak on that.
Yeah, I was super excited when we learned that we were going to be working with Sonos. I'm a big fan. I think I own 2 Sonos speakers. I'd love to own more, but they're not cheap.
You can always get another one. Maybe let me know and maybe we can work something out.
um, so when you were starting to look for a dam, what were some of the things that were happening within the organization, Sonos as a whole, that kind of led you to think, hey, like, we need to start figuring out a dam or something to organize our assets here. So what were the kind of challenges that you were trying to solve, or what were you noticing that you felt like you needed to address with a dam?
Yeah, so when I came into Sonos, they didn't really have a like dedicated data asset management platform at all. We were using a creative production company that had their own kind of asset library that we kind of used in place of a DAM. So this kind of comes when you're a smaller company, you don't have as many assets, you're not producing kind of a large volume, but obviously as companies grow and change, expand into new markets, that system becomes pretty outdated very quickly. So a lot of the issues we had was one, it was in the hands of another party. So we always had to go through kind of a middleman to get what we needed. The search on the library was just terrible. Quite literally, if you didn't have the right access, if you didn't even know you had the right access, you just couldn't find the files you needed. And it kind of created a culture of one, really relying off that third party to do all the work for you and being charged accordingly. And then also kind of just not being like in control of your own work. So when you're not in control of your own work, you don't really produce and make the efficiencies that you normally would if you had that kind of level of oversight that we do now with Media Valet. Another aspect outside the lack of control was really that no central source of truth. It was really easy for assets to be duplicated, edited, versioned up by different parties or different groups within Sonos or our creative partners outside. And we wouldn't see those updates. They weren't able to be synced. They weren't able to kind of be dynamic in that way on the library. So we had a lot of instances of people using the wrong files, wasting time, trying to get what they needed. And really it just added a lot of like bloat. It kind of made, using anything related to that storage system a pain for a lot of employees.
Yeah, it really compounds the problems with search. If you have a lot of bloated assets, you're trying to find the things, but you get so many results, you're just like, give
Yeah,
up.
I mean, the worst is like, you're working on this big new project, and why can't we even find just the central renders for the product itself, or like the 10 lifestyle images? Like, why are these so hard to find? And security is a big thing too. We have new products coming out that we don't want obviously public until we decide to make that public. And on the previous platform we were using, it was very difficult to control the security. So having that gap was obviously something we had to remedy pretty quickly.
Yeah. So really like ownership and control were the kind of main things that were
Exactly. Yeah.
driving decisions. Okay. So then fast forward a little bit to today. Can you kind of give, I know you're using Media Valley in a lot of different ways, but can you kind of give us some big points or as to how you're using the platform within your role and within the organization?
Yeah, so Media Valet is really the central source of all of our go-to-market assets. So this basically means any product you see on Sonos.com, as well as our IS professional channels, even in our global regions, all of those assets are stored on Media Valet. So this is product renders, lifestyle photography, key messaging, copy, retail guidelines, display ads, banners. I mean, it really just keeps going on. Now, of course, even a lot of video assets are being stored on there. Basically, everything that can even relate to one asset or a seasonal campaign is hosted on the library. And like I was saying before, that central source of truth, a big part of that is having a library that has a like predictable file structure, is kind of intuitive. You can log on, and even though you may not be able to find what you need, you definitely can like go to these specific functions within Sonos and see what they've produced and maybe find something you didn't even know you needed. So a big part of it was having a library that was very open to everyone at Sonos, and also still maintain the security that was necessary when producing some of those embargoed materials. So we transitioned from a lot of Google Drive sharing, using Box, Dropbox, our previous platform, to basically keep everything on there. So it's always the same. Everyone has a central source. If it's not on there, it doesn't exist, or it's kept much farther away from people for a specific reason. But yeah, it's basically our go-to one-stop shop at this point.
And I know, so you work with a lot of external partners, agencies, you have your internal team. Um, how does Media Valley fit into that campaign production process? I mean, I know it's a lot to manage and there's a lot of moving parts and security is a big piece. So perhaps you can maybe just talk specifically around that campaign production component.
Yeah, so we have about 5,000 users on Media Valet. I'd say a very small percent of them are maybe daily active users, but we have a lot of people in the professional channel space. So these are people who install Sonos products in commercial spaces or in large homes. We also have obviously a lot of regional products and regional campaigns. So from all the various countries in the EU region, or also Southeast Asia or growth markets, there's just so many different partners and agencies and translators, people that specialize in localization that need access to our products and also build out their marketing materials as we are producing our own assets for a launch. So when it comes to using Media Valet for that, we have kind of these like tiered user group systems that are very flexible and are controlled pretty directly. Like I said, our previous platform, we had to kind of go through this third party to control our own security, which is just, kind of ridiculous as I say it out loud. That's just not something you would want to do. So now, it's in the control of my hands, marketing operations, and also security at Sonos. The security team can have insight directly into our library. We can now kind of tier and dole out and control how our assets are produced, either from something incredibly public to something very secretive and, building out, up to a year in advance of launch. So we use Media Valet for like version control, project management. We have people upload and download to our own library, and they even manage the folders in certain categories. So we allow people to have like workspaces in a sense that serve their projects. We also use light boxes as one of your features that's been really helpful, where people can kind of have these like whiteboards of how they want to add or move their assets around without even touching the library, and kind of share them privately. So people get like kind of best of both worlds, access to everything, but also they can work in these kind of smaller, easier spaces. And since everything is all synced, and I have, me and my marketing operations team can see pretty much everything at like a bird's eye view, it's really helped us gather a lot of insight into how we produce our work and how complicated and, complex these processes can be when you're working with people all around the world in all these different languages. So we've gained a lot of insight just even from the objective data we can look at within Media Ballet during these production times.
It's always interesting to see how different teams use the same set of tools. Like some really lean towards light boxes and using them to manage their projects, and then others will use web galleries or portals or categories. There's just 100 different ways to do the same thing. So it's interesting just to see what fits for their particular workflow. How about attributes? I mean, just switching into the kind of metadata model and talking around keywords, categories, and attributes, how are you making use of that data, those data points and attributes to help with like the licensing side of things and the management side of things?
Yeah, so the custom attributes have been really helpful on Media Valet. Like I was saying with our previous platform, we didn't have much insight or customization to how our work was uploaded. So one thing that has been really helpful is being able to incorporate licensing, expiration dates, use terms directly into the metadata of our assets. So this means when we upload, for example, a set of campaign files like videos, GIFs, pictures, now, alongside that, when you're looking on the library, you can see immediately, all right, this asset is supposed to go live at this date. It's going to expire at this date. Maybe we even have like, oh, the model in this image expires here, but the music use expires here. We can get like really granular and we can have it really well tracked on the asset. And most importantly, we can also set expiration dates for files when the licensing term ends. Anyone I think that's worked at marketing at a high level, especially a global level, licensing is almost a like constant upkeep process that is incredibly tricky and it's very confusing for a lot of people. And it's really difficult to track a file once you produce it. We give it to upwards of 1,000 people. How do we make sure all of those thousands of people that are using this file know, hey, on October 15th, 2025, you must pull this out of your retail display. You must pull this off your website or social use. So Media Valet, thankfully, once we hit the expiration date of an asset, it becomes rejected. We set the user group permissions so certain users cannot even see an asset once it's rejected, which is really helpful, but admins can see it. So we have that, again, that kind of myriad views of looking at our files where the right people can see what's expired, what is kind of causing a problem right now, while the user kind of gets a much cleaner, easy experience where they can't even download that file anymore. So we know that it's not going to be distributed further, which can save, a brand a lot of money licensing. I think if anyone, like I said, knows if an asset expires, you're still using it, the legal costs can be exorbitant, not just to renew it, but if that person that you license from wants to litigate against you in that sense. So being able to incorporate licensing directly into the thousands of files we share can be like, really just hugely cost saving, but also incredibly efficient compared to what we had before.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. I I like as well with the attribute piece specifically, you can use it for search. So you can search for not just values, but actually assets that don't have values as well. So you can see where have I missed putting in this licensing content? Is there anything that I've not flagged up? So yeah,
Exactly.
it's powerful but simple at the same time. Security. I know
Mhm.
that that's like it's a delicate one to talk about for you. I know that, but there's a lot of delicate security pieces to the work that you do. You've got a lot of new products coming to market that everybody wants to get their hands on, and you got to protect. So, how do you address that? How do you avoid the content going to the wrong folks, or getting into the wrong hands?
Yeah, so one thing that we've done at Sonos over the last few years is really prioritize security when sharing really anything related to an unreleased product. So this goes from everything from copy to images to strategy. This is pretty common among, I think, a lot of tech brands as well, where, yeah, the bigger you get, the more people really want to see this stuff and the more incentive there is for people to distribute that material. Or also just, not think about how you're sharing it. We don't want the wrong product being uploaded to a different website, or we don't want people accessing things too early because maybe they're not even finished. Maybe we're still working on that file. So there's so many different aspects to how you want to control certain assets as you're producing them for a new product or a campaign. And with Media Valet, we've been able to really just sleep a lot better at night, knowing that we have these very tight control over who can access what. We even integrate with Okta, which is a really popular authentication service. Everyone at Sonos has to use Okta to log in and use Media Valet. So there's a direct control we have with that integration. And then for people outside of Media Valet, while they don't need to use Okta to get in, as a library administrator, I can choose which group they have access to, what folders can they even access when they're in Media Valet. I can control everything from what they can share, what they can download, how they can share, and how they can download. It gets really granular with how you can control users on the library. So when it comes to us creating a new product, like I said, up to a year in advance sometimes, it was really tricky before to make sure that that stayed in the right pool of people, that there wasn't wrongful copies being sent out or kind of duplicate work being done. So now that we have that tighter control, we've been able to make much more efficiencies, much more streamlined workflows when it comes to producing that product. At the same time, really avoid, anything kind of getting into the wrong hands or being distributed too early.
I like that it's making you sleep better at night. You look well rested.
Yeah, definitely helps everybody out.
That's awesome. So just switching gears to chat a little bit around the kind of the results. You've gone through this process. We spent a lot of time building this platform and making it work smoothly for you. What are the results? What are the outcomes that you've seen from implementing Media Valley? Are there certain things that you feel that you can do now that you couldn't have done before, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, truly the most critical thing that takes up most of our time is simply sharing the work between our teams. It sounds like it would be easy, but again, when you're working with embargoed, sensitive product, you really should not be just downloading those images and sending them over Slack or over email where it can be likely compromised. As well as you're sharing static images that you've downloaded versus you're sharing a link to an asset that if it gets versioned up, if we change the metadata, now they're going to get the latest and greatest copy, which is really essential when working at a global scale where people are going to be downloading work in your off hours and you can't really reach out to them directly live to help them assist with maybe some details or information that relates to that work they're doing. So one thing that's been really helpful that we didn't even realize was one, that central source, having it stay live and active allows teams outside of the US continue their work without, us. We're based in Santa Barbara, Sonos, if I didn't mention that before. When we're kind of quite literally asleep and other people are continuing the work, having that live dynamic control has been really helpful and allows teams outside the US to work better with each other and make sure they're getting the latest and greatest as well when it comes to our work. Another thing that we kind of didn't expect to be really helpful was just the asset tracking and asset history feature on Media Valet. So when you're looking at a file, anyone can actually view who uploaded it, who viewed it, who sent it to who downloaded it. And there's obviously a great security benefit that provides, but also it actually gives us really objective key results in the handoff schedules of our production process. So a lot of people on my team are marketing planners. They're the ones working even up to 2 years out with the product, putting all the dates on a calendar of the like 30 to 50 different hands off and different, times that we're producing work and sharing it and distributing it. So when we are told by specific teams, hey, we need this end of day Friday, no later than this, and then we deliver it, and then 2 weeks go by and no one's touched the file. So I think anyone who's worked in project management is extremely familiar with this phenomenon. And while it's not necessarily going to prove one way or another that this is necessary, it does give us information that we can work with or maybe even open a conversation about with those partners. We can say, hey, you said you needed this Friday, no one's touched them. Like, is there something wrong? Do we need to do this? What happened? As a marketing operations team, that is basically like, gold to us, that information. We need to know how people work. We need to know what works for each other. We need to know if there are gaps in communication. So having that asset tracking feature, as well as having the assets stay live, has allowed us to collect really like troves of information about how we work that we would have not had before. And now we can actually change our planning process, give certain people more time, give certain people less time in the right ways that we didn't have before.
That's very cool. That level of, I guess you would call it, accountability across your organization,
Yeah.
right? The ability to track and audit is huge.
Yeah, exactly.
You've mentioned a ton of these already. I feel bad asking you for another one, but we're all about our hot damn moments here. We like to just find those moments where you have that kind of aha, that was like, oof, that was awesome, or maybe we just sage your bacon with something. Do you have any kind of experiences or anecdotes where you just like were like, oh god, that really helped me out in that point?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there are so many, it feels like, where Media Ballet has like solved a lot of intricate issues we've had before that we didn't even realize were an issue until we found out it could be fixed, later on in the process. Definitely a major one I would say is, Rob, you were very familiar with this. When we transitioned to Media Ballet, we had something around 20,000 assets. These are not even just images or video. This is like copy, animations, it's tons of different working files. And just from the metadata that our previous platform gave us, it was very, very difficult to find what we needed to sort at this kind of large level. So what we did was about 80% of those assets went into a kind of archive folder on Media Ballet. They weren't accessible to everybody. Only the administrative team like myself could access it. Part of this was just to make the library a lot cleaner, also for us to learn how many people are actually accessing this older work. And then obviously a backup, you must have multiple backups of all your work in any working scenario. So while we also had a cold storage, another type of hot storage, this specific archive folder on Media Valet is basically what I use when people cannot find what they need that goes maybe further back than a few years of our production process. So most of the time it's not really used at all. And then what ended up happening was, of course, as you go about working, sometimes people need to access older material. And we actually had a moment, really long story short, where basically an entire team, much higher up than me, needed to access all the old product renders, all of the old key messaging, all of the different banner ads, really like comprehensive suite of assets for a ton of older products. And this is something that quite literally we just could not have done before. We would not have been able to find these. Maybe we would have found like 20% of them, the things that were clearly labeled and easy. It would have taken hours upon hours of work. We would have likely had to actually pay somebody at our previous platforms enterprise to actually do that work for us because it was something that we couldn't even spend the time doing. It just would have been way too difficult, way above our insight. And again, we didn't even have access to a lot of those files. So it's something that the people even at our previous platform may have not even been able to find them because everything was locked to these weird permissions and nested so deep in the system. So with Media Ballet, I was able to, search keywords, search file names. You can search text within images. That is a hugely beneficial feature that I think is really underrated. Being able to search text within videos even. There's just all this different technology that allows us to filter and get more granular and collect the information very succinctly and quickly. And basically, this took me like a few hours in the afternoon to find everything I needed. And that, for the team, they needed this stuff like end of day. They really did actually need it end of day. Unlike mentioned before, they really did need it. So the fact that I was able to do that in just an afternoon, save literally weeks of time, possibly make sure we actually got everything we needed. I didn't have to bother anybody. We didn't have to pay anybody. A huge moment. And honestly, there's so many like that happen at smaller scales that it's something, yeah, we're just really, really beneficial for.
That's a very cool story. I do love the AI text recognition is so powerful. It often picks up the smallest things
Yeah,
and
you can put like blue couch. Oh, I remember it was outside, it's like these little details, huge help because like I was saying before, our previous system was so inefficient, people were not doing the work of really naming things correctly, tagging them correctly. So Media Valley is able to like fill that gap of, kind of the messiness that a lot of us, I think, deal with in this field.
Last question I have for you before we jump into our polls. Any advice that you would give to folks who are looking to leverage a dam in their own marketing kind of world?
Yeah, I mean, meanwhile, like I just said, obviously Media Valley can fill a lot of gaps and that kind of messiness or disorganization we all are used to. You still will obviously get even more out of it the more work you put in. So when it came to utilizing, your team, Rob, like asking you, hey, like, what can we do here? Oh, I'm having this weird issue. Maybe there's actually a resolve for it. Either you'll confirm we can't do something about it, or oh no, we can, but here's how you do it, or here's who we can reach out to. All of those things help majorly. And being able to work with all the different people at Sonos who are been doing, this job for 10, 15 years even, asking them what really serves their team, what serves kind of their work style, all of that, collecting all of that different information has been really helpful. And so thankfully with Media Valley, since we can customize the way that everything works on the library, it allows us to completely design the system to fit us. I think the way we design our library is going to be very different than obviously every company to the next, as well as even just the general use. So I would say the more work you put in, the better. ask and collaborate as much as possible, all of that has made it, even multitudes better than we could have expected.
That's good advice. And yeah, 100%, especially with the stakeholders, finding good stakeholders from different departments, bringing in their advice.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky in that I'm in marketing operations and my team that's like truly their job. That's what they do every day. But I know a lot of people, myself included, at previous jobs, a lot of people are kind of assigned to be the data asset manager and they don't really have colleagues in their own field. Usually there's like just one or two of you in a company. So I'm lucky to have a group of people that can do that and rely on my tech skill. But I think, yeah, even if you're alone on your own end, still worth it. Still worth doing all that extra collaboration and work.
So, well, thanks so much for sharing that. That was super interesting for me. I hope everyone on the call found that useful. I love hearing the Sonos stories. Before I let you go, though, we're going to jump in to some questions. Before that, we'll do a quick poll. If any of you want to learn more about any of the things we discussed today on the call, any of the features, if you think that could be useful for you, single sign-on, all that fun stuff, put it into the poll and we will get in touch. While that's happening, I can see some numbers appearing on the screen. Let's jump into our Q&A and see if there are any questions right now that we need to pick up on. Seeing too much in there. Ian, do we have any questions for Q&A? Pretty quiet. Oh, here we go. Question: how do you ensure external partners in one country using a specific language only see their assets and not other partners' assets?
That's a good question. It's still a tricky one because I think in the EU there's like different languages used in different regions. So there's a lot of Venn diagrams going on. One thing that I've been able to do is work closely with that team, our EMEA team, that specialize in all those different regions. Obviously, I can't speak the language or know kind of what that work even looks like when I'm on the library. I can't differentiate myself. But what we've done is I partner with that team as well as one of our larger creative and localization teams. And what they've worked out is they create folder structures that are very consistent. Basically, when they produce sets of work, they will quite literally have subfolders for all the different languages as they appear. And depending on what our partners are looking for, I'll actually create unique user groups for those regions. And I can turn on and off those folders. That can get pretty complicated pretty quickly, depending on how much work you're really distributing. But what I've found out, or we've discovered on what works on our end, is that certain types of partners require certain types of assets. So our distributors, they are the type that buy a lot of Sonos products, resell in their own stores. And then there's more retailers that have a somewhat different relationship with how they sell the work. So we've just created unique user groups that serve those functions and kind of just by trial by error, keep that going and refine how it works. And thankfully now our teams produce work in a predictable manner that allows that to be a lot more achievable.
It's got a process going. And one more quick question here. I know we're almost at time. Curious to know if Sonos use a project management system along with Media Valley to manage your work.
Yeah, a lot of different teams. There's obviously kind of the larger ones like Jira and such that certain teams use. But when it comes to at least the side of marketing I'm on, go-to-market, and mainly our brand, creative, retail teams and our regional teams, we actually use really just Google spreadsheets. Unfortunately, we don't use anything too fancy right now. We are looking into something a bit more comprehensive, but our marketing planners on my end, they take a lot of that project management work. So they have kind of their own methods of how they do it. But as we grow, we're definitely going to look into something a bit more comprehensive.
Well, we are at time. Matt, this has been super interesting. I really appreciate you taking this deep dive. I love hearing these stories and just understanding how your world works. I'm excited to see where we go from here as well. I'm sure there's lots more we can tackle. So we'll see where things go. But yeah, thanks for taking your time today. I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And I hope you found it useful in your damn journey. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rob. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity. See you, everyone.
Have a good day, everyone. Cheers.